I feel like everybody has an infatuation with mediocrity and trying to be extraordinary at the same time, because on two sides of the same coin, on one side they're trying to, they feel like they need to be extraordinary, but on the other side they feel like, I don't feel like working for this. So yeah. I feel like stuff like the lottery. Like, I think America has an obsession with getting like they feel like they need to deserve something for nothing. Like the lottery and raffles and all these different, I put in a little bit and so give me all of it type attitude is everywhere. And I feel like when people see that, they take it to heart and are like, I deserve this and I deserve that. And when in real life they don't feel like they need to work for it. Yeah, I feel like they try to skip over the main parts and try to the easy parts of trying to achieve the dream. Like in any process, there's the easy parts and there's the really hard parts. And most of the time, not most of the time, I can't say that. Sometimes people like to skip around the hard parts and just say, I deserve this because I want to do it, which isn't a reason at all. And so, yeah.
How did it change and shift? It was more like, yeah, I mean, when I started dreaming, I dreamed with no prior knowledge of anything. You know what I'm saying? So, which is the beauty part of it, is like there's still a childish nature to the dream. But then, as you start going through a few things, it's not that, what's the word? It wasn't that I scaled back anything, but I just kind of, I refocused and reshaped it to make it make sense. Because, for example, like, I think a very ambitious dream is like, no more poverty ever again. No one will be poor. That's a crazy dream. I don't think it's impossible, but it's more so when you have a dream like that and you're like, you know what, I'm going to make sure everyone never has poverty again. The thing is, that's not that far away. That's a very possible thing. The thing about it is you have to think about how are you able to achieve that thing. I think, for example, like, let's say we use the example of diminishing poverty, right? I think that's very possible as long as you understand. Like, for example, it's naturally going that way. Like, things in quality are starting to become better and everything is starting to be pushed up. And I think in the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, it will diminish. Does that mean it's going to diminish tomorrow? Maybe it won't. Maybe it won't diminish in my lifetime. But I think if you understand that dreams aren't really about instant gratification, and it's kind of about delayed gratification, then maybe you can kind of shift that focus into something else, which shifts into something else, into a bigger plan. Instead of just being one-track minded to getting to one specific goal without thinking that there's steps to this thing or process or patience involved. So it really wasn't me kind of like compromising my dreams. It was more me compromising the process of how I was going to get it done. That's what happened.
I think it's always systems, like, period, right? So a black man trying to progress in an alternative manner in America is bumping against all systems, period. It's not an optimal environment for this seed to grow. So when the seed starts to prosper, it's doing some alternative things internally in order for it to sprout in such a manner, right? So off bucks, you're bumping up against people that don't understand. You follow what I'm saying? So I point to people coming back to sort of like the lifestyle, the Pan-African lifestyle, vegan, a different type. They open a different type of spirituality. You hear people call themselves goddesses and witches and God and this, that, and the third. That's just sort of at the root of what we do. But sort of there's evidence sometimes that you're talented, or there's evidence in just social constructs that show that you might be more advanced. You follow? And sometimes we use them as measuring sticks. And when you're young, you don't really have a choice to. But it's one you always know. Oh, I'm faster. I can jump higher. I read faster, or I can read at an earlier age, or you can notice certain things, separations, you know. And it's not to say that you're better in that avenue, you know, because that's definitely something I've learned throughout life, that, you know, everybody has sort of like this blessing, you know, and you get to it one way or the other. But the deterrence, like when you bump up against them, it's sort of like, okay, let's just think about it. Let's take football, for example. I was an athlete. I played football in college. I ain't play much, but I went to school to play college. Went to college to play football, and you think about the way athletes have changed right now, right? When I was in high school, the way that tackling and all of that went was like the objective was to kill someone on the field, celebrate, and go home and have a pizza party. Like, that's just what it was, right? And now that changes. But the difference in it, the reason why the athletes are faster and they strike different now is that they're just superior to how they were in terms of how they pursue their health and the way they maintain their bodies. They're more plant-based now, they're lighter, they're faster versus an old way, which would have been the way of the heavy meat protein, animal protein diet, right? So now, say I'm in a time of Arnold Schwarzenegger and I'm a vegan bodybuilder, that's just out of the norm. So we bumping up. Automatically, why would you do that? Because it's not the norm, you know? So I found in life that when people are in a long line, you should probably not get in it. Like, that's generally not the wave. You want to get to the different, that's not the direction that you want to flow in, just because in general, like, as a collective, we all have individual intelligence. Like, we're experts in certain things, but when it comes to one item, it's only a pool of experts. You follow what I'm saying? So the masses generally going to choose wrong because they're not informed properly, because we're only experts in a few things. So as far as like detraction, I would just say, like, people that are just up against, that are succeeding at the norm or are trying to succeed at doing the norm. But I wouldn't say I've ever had detractors. I call like haters. I just call them late adopters, right? Because if your job is to succeed, right, and if you don't succeed, they're right. They're not hating. They're just they're giving you some criticism maybe. But if you succeed, that's when you could be a hater. They're just wrong. You follow what I'm saying? I don't even consider people haters. It's like, oh, they late adopters because either they're going to get on or they just going to admit that they dislike it or they was wrong, period. That's just how it goes. Your job is to go and be the best you. You don't have no haters. You just got late adopters, man. We got, you know. So I don't think of people as detractors. It's just people, you know, maybe less informed or more highly informed than I. And I'm incorrect, you know. It's just how we all just trying to figure it out, and we all build our defense mechanisms accordingly. And sometimes you bump up against it more so people's defense mechanism than you really bumping up against them and their ego and who they see themselves as, or who someone told them they should be. You know, my father told me I'm supposed to be the best, so I'm sorry. It's hard for me to acknowledge that I'm not, you know. So that's what they're dealing with on one side, and I'm dealing with someone on the other side. So I don't think of it that way. I just think of it like, man, we just got different types of information, and I try to make sure I'm well informed.
I think that my biggest dissuaders, and it's hard to say, but it's true. My biggest dissuaders, unintentionally, were my family. Once I got grown, once they realized, oh, he really gonna try to do this, right? Like, oh, you got your college degree, but you really about to move up there and at the time I'm 21. You know, 21 years old. You know, you feel like there's only one way to do a thing. So I'm like, yo, I can't get no job. I got to go 100% in because this is how you do it. And if I get a job, then how am I gonna make my meetings? And like, that did not exist. Meetings that didn't exist yet. But I'm like, what if I get a meeting? You know what I mean? And so my mother was kind of like, yo, get a job, kid. Like, you know, this is it's almost like it's like a waste of a degree and a waste of time and a waste of money. And it's sort of like, yo, at some point you gotta be responsible and grow up. It was that kind of conversation. And I know those conversations mean well, but they tend to be painfully dismissive. Right? Because what it's really saying is that your dream is not responsible. Like, having a dream is irresponsible, right? And there are ways for us to have nuanced conversations, but that's not what happens oftentimes. It's like, yo, put down your little dream, get you a job like all your friends back home, buy you a house like all your friends back home, find you a wife like all your friends back home. Let's talk about kids. And I'm 22. Right? Like, but that it's like, it's the idea that there are these social benchmarks that you're expected to make. And if you don't make those things, your family, though they love you, especially black families, because they come out of spaces of oppression and marginalization, they fear for your life. And that fear oftentimes looks like dissuasion.
I think some of the biggest challenges that I've had, and, you know, all these kind of expressions in my life is, you know, being around or maybe attempting to rely or having to engage with people who don't have vision, you know, and this is something that it's really hard, you know, it's a realization you have to come to, is like, you can't expect people without vision to see you when you live on this kind of plane, like when you are constantly evolving, when you're constantly moving, you know, you'll never be in focus for those people. And you know, and they find ways into all of your environments, and you know, it just ends up being, you know, quite a challenge, because, you know, now you have to navigate something, you know, you have to navigate the minutia, you know, because, you know, people who participate in these like big vision, these big ideas, these big changes, these things that are so conceptual, you know, those things are hard and heavy enough. And you know, I feel like the biggest detractor, the biggest distraction, the biggest challenge is not that. It's never that. It's never the big work. It's the minutia. It's the people and the things that are around you, the obstacles that appear. And when you're running this fast, you know, every obstacle becomes a potential major threat. You know, it's one thing to, you know, step on a rock while you're just walking around, but stepping on a rock when you're at full gait could potentially bring you down.
You have to work for it. I mean, I would say don't give up, but if I have to say that, that means that you don't really want to do this. Because if I have to say don't give up, that means that you were thinking about giving up. Which, if you really wanted to achieve your dream, you shouldn't. You shouldn't. That shouldn't even be in your mind. So what I would say is you have to do the hard parts. You can't just skip over it, and don't feel like anybody you're entitled to or anybody deserves you any like form of boost, because you don't.
I think, first of all, you have to understand people's passion and things that make them run. People, ideas and aspiration is not dependent upon what your opinion is. My son, I guess he was about 8 years old, he got involved in this quote unquote hip hop movement. And when it came on the radio, the station, whatever it was, had probably the weakest signal around here. And he would be listening to that stuff with all of this static and interference that you get when you have a weak radio signal. But anyway, I told him at a very early age that music wasn't going nowhere. And I resented, in a sense, of him liking that, because I'm a jazz person, so here you go, he was supposed to like jazz. But he was a hip-hopper. And one day I was working for a law firm, and one day one of the salesmen I used to have to deal with, we were talking about our kids, and I was telling him that how disappointed I was that my son loved this hip hop stuff, That's what I was calling it, because I thought it was a bunch of noise. And I was complaining about his passion. Of course, I didn't see it as a passion then. And he's the one that woke me up. And he said, you need to understand that even though you may not care for his passion, that's his passion. That's what he loves. And that you should encourage, not discourage his passion, because that's his passion, not yours, not meant for you to like, you know, because he is who he is and you are who you are. So you can't determine what he likes or don't like as long as it's not illegal or criminal. And so then I began to respect that. And I never forgot that, because there's so many things in life we think we know that we don't know. You know, you get to a certain age, a certain place in life, we think that we are some kind of authority on things that we know little or nothing about. So we don't try to learn. You know, learning is nothing negative about learning. You don't have to agree with it, but you can learn a lot by respecting other people's passion. You know, you might say, well, I wouldn't do that. Well, we ain't talking about you. Okay, so I learned from that you shouldn't disrespect other people's passion or their area of interest. And I'm very proud of my son. I think he's done very well, primarily because he got into this stuff at 8 years old. You know, it's amazing. He goes all over the world. He's been places I haven't been. And I'll never forget, one day I got a phone call, picked up the phone, and my son was on the phone. I asked him where he was at. He said he's on the Great Wall of China. And I never imagined for 1 second that that's someplace he would get to see in a lifetime. And he was there because of his passion, because of his music. That's how he's been able to go all over the world, and I think that's wonderful. He's been more places than I have. I've been to a lot of foreign countries, but he superseded me. So I'm much more aware, and I think an open mind and a willingness to learn about other things and other people and other culture is a wonderful thing, because it gives me at least a great feeling of security, that I don't get all wrapped around the axle about stuff that people get into daily, primarily because they don't understand it. So in a lot of cases they don't understand it, so they reject it, and that's not a good mindset.
I feel like we all have like that inner voice, right? Like that inner voice is just constantly telling you that, yo, you love this, right? And as much as, yeah, you maybe need to get out and do something that's a little easier, right? That's a little bit more by the book. That voice is just constantly in your ear, like, yeah, but you know you'd rather be doing this, right? And so listen, it's ultimately you. Like, you got to listen to yourself, man. Listen to that inner voice. Follow your heart. You know where your heart is, and just keep pushing at it until you make it into something. I always look at it as, the way I try to explain it to people is, you invest a lot of time into that from a very young age because you loved it. Why throw all of that away? Who's to say, like, you being, like we always say, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, what do you want to be right now? Okay, so get started and just keep going, and then put so much time and energy in it that it would be an absolute waste to throw it away, right? To go to anything else would be starting over. And it's not to say you can't do that, but why would you want to, right? So just follow that inner voice, man. Keep pushing forward. Stop making excuses and just make it happen, you know?
Yo, pop. Listen. Hey, you always taught me be the best at it. The fact is, practice make perfect, and work ain't hard. All your lessons, I heard them through the fire to break stone walls up. My desire, that's the danger, my God. When I hit the yellow brick road of this here music, now through the backstage curtain, yo, you chid. But to my face told me it's all a waste to get a plan to fall back on. I'm like, Pops, fall back where? Yo, my skills, they been there. You the one who taught me the frustration of the game with the jewels that you claim you ain't have. No abacus, dog, there's no math. So I was stuck on the plane, let's travel. You the plug, but the chords all tangled, Jane and greed, envy sometimes. Yo, it seems you had an angle secretly. Yo, you fearing for my life when it all unraveled. I'm like, what I'm gonna do if I don't got you? Because
you told me to be my best, so you better know I'm following your steps. So you gotta know I won't rest until past now your crown. You told me to be my best, so you better know I'm following your steps. So you gotta know I won't rest until you pass now your crowns and crowns that fathers pass
that's all built in my
down.
house on a concrete support. New floors, new walls, new roof. Yeah, and yo, my heart's still yearning for the king to give his blessing. I guess I got to show and prove now. My brother was the prodigal. I guess I'm just a prodigy. I got so much more to lose, but I'm tired on these shackles on my feet that won't let me dance, boy. I'm just trying to get loose, move beyond your shadow, discover my own muse. Time to cop my own tools and battle my addictions. But in most ways, I'm just like you. That's a cold cup to brew, drink, and manage. It took a minute to understand why I couldn't see the forest when there weren't any trees on hand. See the problem right there. I knew you had the seeds, I knew you had the dreams, but the crown was never ever mine to have. Listen, because
You told me to be my best, so you better know I'm following your footsteps. So you gotta know I won't rest until you pass down your crown. You told me to be my best, so you better know I'm following your footsteps. And you gotta know I won't rest until you pass down your crowns and crowns that fathers pass down. Sweet
yeah, I plucked her right out of the ocean. Yeah, somewhere between Kokayi and Vine. Oh, whoa. Now over for drinks, said she had the notion that I was one of her, or one of her very own kind. Now that's improbable, given I'm a different breed from the sun, baby, where my people often for free. She said it's cold down here in the shallow, or deeper out there by the reef. We keep them sharks at bay now with these games, so baby, make sure you don't bleed. Whoa. She said she liked the way that the earth fell. Sometimes she need her feet to be wet. A lot of shopping spree for the finer things. Yeah, she always worried, but she watching out, watching for the fisherman's net. Oh, now that's improbable. Now I relate, I never offer you no bait. Now but you swam up on me anyway. So darling, baby, what you say? She said it's cold down here in the shallow, a deep out there by the reef. We keep the sharks at bay now with these games, so baby, make sure you don't bleed. Whoa. Take it so deep that you won't see, you'll never come up for air. Whoa. Yup. Yup. Hey yo, I can't breathe, the chokehold is twofold, so I ain't free. They hold shots, crooked cops, courts on fears. Fright night, a fight club, I like a double feed. Short of snow, few chores, puffed eyes and suit chores. My soul on empty, it's hard to hide the life scars and blemish. Lumped up, rocky dinner snow. Trump card, but Trump is spitting. The vitriol disguises Kavanaugh, good decisions. America getting white again, 1800 black flight again. My kin skin and light again, light again. I'm choking on my tears, anger in my ears. A stranger in the midst of sun-kissed fruit. That's Willie Lynch. Cause I'm sick and I'm tired and I'm fed up. Seems like the system been set up for we. Yeah, I think that we all agree on that we sick and we tired, we fed up. Seems like the system been set up, so we bleed. I think that we all agree. And you can catch him in that 4K killing. A deeper resolution, there's no justice and no equal distribution. Systematic retribution, sacred hate from institutions made to incarcerate my person. Bond to use a daily distribution. I blame you niggas, nearly every collie pop. Never biting and you holly bark. Paid into my anguish for sacred coded language for a collar so distinguished it asphyxiate the sacred. For $1 in your pocket, you initiate exchanges so it's sold for a pound. Blind eye for the ballot, pillage for positions or perceived power. Plus you pimp out the impoverished to supplement your income. Revenue streams is flowing free, full of blood and dreams never established. Tell me to never buck the system, never fight, just yell. Stay up in the whole field. Sitting out here, how we building for our children. What I'm asking, cause I'm feeling. Cause I'm sick and I'm tired and I'm fed up.